When you think of a tsunami, you probably picture a huge earthquake you can feel, followed almost immediately by this terrifying wall of water. But what about when the quake happens on the complete other side of the world? That's what we're diving into today. The strange, deceptive threat of a distant tsunami, a danger that travels silently across oceans before it ever makes itself known. Okay, so picture this. A massive 8.7 magnitude earthquake strikes. But it's so far away, you don't feel a single thing. Not a tremor. Nothing. Your gut tells you you're fine, right? So why on earth are officials suddenly blasting out these urgent, life-or-death evacuation warnings for your area? It's a total paradox, and it gets right to the heart of this hidden threat.
Well, the answer is as simple as it is chilling. It's because the deadliest wave isn't always the first one that shows up. In fact, it might not arrive for hours. Let's take a look at how this exact scenario played out during a real massive alert.
All right, let's get into it. Our story kicks off with a massive earthquake off the coast of Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. It happened thousands of miles from the places it would eventually put in danger, and it set the stage for a day-long crisis that stretched across the entire Pacific. So here's a look at how it all went down. At 8:25 in the morning, the quake hits off the Russian coast. Pretty soon after, alerts start flying. But look at this timeline. The real danger, the peak wave, isn't going to make landfall somewhere like Japan for many, many hours. A single moment in Russia started a clock ticking for literally millions of people. This is what the experts call a far-field tsunami. The energy from that one quake near Kamchatka didn't just dissipate, it traveled across the entire Pacific Ocean basin. That's why alerts weren't just for Russia. They were blasted out for coastlines thousands of miles away in Japan and even Hawaii. It just shows you the incredible reach of these things.
So that begs a huge question, right? How can a wave that travels for thousands of miles, for hours and hours, still be so dangerous when it finally arrives? The answer is in the fascinating and, frankly, pretty terrifying physics of how a tsunami moves and grows. Out in the deep ocean, a tsunami is kind of sneaky. It's not this towering monster wave. No, it can travel at the speed of a jetliner, but its wave height can be so small that a ship could pass right over it and not even notice. The real danger starts when it gets close to the coast. As the water gets shallower, the wavefront slows down, and all that energy and water traveling behind it starts to compress and, well, pile up. That's what transforms it into a destructive force right at the shoreline. And the danger isn't even spread out. One expert we looked at put it perfectly. The unique shape of the seafloor and the coastline can act like a lens, focusing all that incoming energy onto one specific spot. This is absolutely critical. It explains why one town might get hit hard, while a town just down the coast is left relatively untouched. And officials knew this wasn't just some theory. They had a chilling historical blueprint to work from. Back in 1952, another huge quake in the exact same area, Kamchatka, sent waves hurtling toward Japan. And you want to guess how long it took for the biggest, most dangerous waves to hit? A full 9 hours. This precedent is exactly why they kept the warnings going for so long. They knew history had a terrifying way of repeating itself. So you get the science, but what does this kind of alert actually look like for people on the ground? The response was just massive. It affected millions of people and basically ground parts of the country to a halt. So what does a response on this scale really mean? The number is, well, it's almost hard to wrap your head around. 1.9 million. No, that's not a typo. Almost 2 million people across 21 different regions were ordered to evacuate to higher ground. Just think about the logistics, the sheer disruption. And all of it was triggered by an earthquake that nobody in Japan even felt. It's an incredible testament to the authorities trusting the science. And that alert sent these ripples through the entire economy. You had major convenience store chains, brands like 7-Eleven, Family Mart, and Lawson that are on practically every corner, shutting down around 800 coastal locations. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the priority. This wasn't about business as usual. It was about getting staff and customers out of harm's way. And the disruption hit critical national infrastructure, too. Airports in coastal areas like Sendai had to shut down their runways. Major airlines grounded planes, canceling flights and messing up the travel plans of over 2,000 passengers. It just goes to show how a single seismic event, thousands of miles away, can bring a modern nation's transport network to a complete standstill. So for hours, an entire nation is basically holding its breath. The first wave started to arrive, and this is where that sneaky danger of complacency becomes so real. Let's look at how the threat didn't just arrive. It actually got worse over time. As those first waves were recorded, the numbers, well, they seemed almost reassuring. Hamanaka Port saw a 60-centimeter wave. Ishinomaki saw 50. That's about shin to knee high. This is the trap. This is the moment of greatest deception. You might see this, breathe a sigh of relief, and think, the worst is over. But you'd be dangerously wrong. And then, bam, the proof. At Kuji Port, an area that had already seen a manageable 60-centimeter wave, a later wave surged to 1.3 meters. That's more than double the height. This right here is the entire lesson in one image. The first wave is often just an announcement. The real power can show up hours later, catching anyone who has let their guard down. So, after all that, what can we all learn from this event? The warnings and the science behind them give us a really clear set of survival rules. And not just for a distant tsunami, but for any tsunami situation. But before we even get to the rules, we have to identify the single biggest threat in a tsunami warning. And it's not the wave itself, it's complacency. It's that little voice in your head that says, it doesn't look so bad, or I'm sure the danger is past. It's that feeling that leads people to ignore warnings and head back down to the coast way too soon. So these are the golden rules, and every single one is designed to fight that deadly complacency. The first one is exactly what we just saw. Later waves can absolutely be higher. And don't ever underestimate what seems like a small wave. Experts warn that fast-moving water that's just shin-deep can knock you right off your feet. And if you ever see the tide suddenly pull way, way out, that is not a cool thing to go look at. That is nature's final alarm bell. The threat can last a full day, so the last rule is the only one that truly guarantees your safety. Stay put until you get the official all clear. Period. Eventually, the warnings from the Kamchatka quake were lifted. And thankfully, because people listened to the advice, the damage was limited. But this whole event was a powerful, real-world drill. It was a test. So the final question is for you. That alert is over now, but is your plan ready for the next one?